Welcome to 32 Bar Cut, the show, a show where we talk with our friends about what it's like to be a performer. Today on 32 Bar Cut, the show, we are sitting down with Broadway's Bradley Gibson from A Bronx Tale, Rocky, and The Lion King.
It's time to welcome on our guest, my favorite by far, a Broadway star,
Bradley Gibson.
On 32 Bar Cut.
I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. Bradley Gibson has had such an amazing career already, and he is just getting started. Welcome to the show, Bradley. Thank you so much for being on.
Hi, Adrienne. This is so much fun. I love this.
I love it too. So Bradley and I have not seen each other since, was it March 11th of last year?
March 11th.
March 11th of last year. Yeah. And we were just chatting before we got the show started about how we both had a moment together before they announced that Broadway was shutting down. And you know, we were like, oh no, they're going to close the show. We know they're going to close the show. And Bradley's like, nah, they're not going to close the show. They're not going to.
They ain't closing Broadway down. I've walked to work in blizzards when the subway was shut down. Like, Broadway's still happening. There's no way. But here we are, almost a year later.
Here we are, almost a year later. Wow.
Yeah.
So how have you been? What have you been up to? What's life look like for you? As much as you want to tell, as little as you want to tell, like, how are you doing?
Let's talk about it. I'm doing pretty good right now. I'm doing pretty good. I won't complain. I could complain, but I'm doing good. When Broadway shut down, I definitely felt a sense of relief, which is really it's a weird feeling to have. Yeah. And I think I felt a lot of guilt for that for a long time. I felt guilty for saying that I felt relief, that I felt like that sort of sense in your body when you get on vacation. You can relax, you can let go, you can enjoy yourself. I felt that the second Broadway shut down. And maybe the first month or two of that, I really felt that sense of relief. Then the feeling of mourning set in, the feelings of what am I going to do, what's going to happen to my life, to my family's life, what's going on in the world, my family in North Carolina. It was a plethora of emotions, but the beginning was definitely relief. And now I'm in a place of, I have a new sense of hope due to our new administration.
Hey.
I have a sense of hope due to the vaccine. I have a new sense of hope just with the new year. So I'm doing really good right now.
I actually felt some of the same things. And it's funny, like, I'll share this with everybody. But when Bradley, actually, you told me that we weren't coming back. Like, you had been texting me that Thursday, and you sent me the article. I think it was a playbill announcement about Governor Cuomo's, no 500 people gathering together. And I was like, wait, what does this mean? And it's so funny because we were chatting with Bonita a few weeks back, and she immediately emailed Ron. And she was like, okay, Ron, so what does this mean for the show? Are we having fewer people in the audience? And he was like, I will get back to you. But basically, it's a no. Like, everything is done, which sounds so unheard of. But I feel you on this, like, feeling of, man, can we relax for a second? I remember texting you, telling you I was headed to the wine shop to fill up my bag.
I told you to go. Get you a full cart of wine, not one bottle. Get you 6 bottles.
Right. I mean, the sky's the limit. We had a month off. In my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, if only I could go on vacation right now. Yeah. And so much has happened since then that has been very dark and sad and unkind about everything that led to that. But yeah, my initial feelings of it was, we're free. And I hate that because it is a dream to live on Broadway, but it's very demanding. It's more demanding than you can know until you're in it, right?
Yeah. It's a huge sacrifice to be on Broadway. And I think people don't often talk about that, or they don't really expose that truth. They don't expose I don't want to say the dark side, but the dark side of being on Broadway, right? The realities of it, the sacrifice of it. And I definitely think that my first response to Broadway shutting down was like, just exhale.
Yeah. Your body gets a chance to heal. Your voice gets a chance to heal. I was having so many vocal issues. Like my vocal instructor is great and she was helping me through it, but I needed a break. And I feel like when you're on this level, you feel so much pressure to not call out. You feel like you can't call out. If you call out, then you're a sucker, you know, like you can't cut the mustard. You can't hold your weight. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just the culture or if it's American culture or what it is that we feel like we can't take breaks even when our bodies are shutting down. You know?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I think it is definitely the culture of Broadway and the culture of whatever theater you're in, the building, the energy in that building.
Yeah.
It's because you care about your job, you care about the show. You know, we get such a luxury of our job as getting a chance to exchange energy with thousands of people every single, and knowing that a lot of them, especially at Lion King, it's their first experience in a Broadway theater. And you remember what it felt like to sit in a theater and take in a Broadway show for the first time. For me, it was sitting in the Minskoff watching The Lion King was my first Broadway experience. So I know what that feels like. And I was so honored and so privileged to be able to tell that story and be there. And knowing how hard I had worked to get to that place, knowing how hard my family had worked to get me there, all the tears I had shed and the rehearsals that I was in to learn the show, still in rehearsals all the time in the show, because it's The Lion King, let's be real.
Look, you don't have to tell me.
So you want to show up for it. But I think if anything that I've learned in this past year in 2020, it's that I'm so human, and that a human has to rest. A human has to pause. A human has to say, I can't do this today. So I hope that when Broadway comes back and when life comes back to normal, whatever that is, that we all kind of hold on to that normal feeling of saying, hey, I'm human, and today I have to check out today.
I have to take a moment.
Respect that.
And I hope that we will be able to understand that for each other, because if we change the culture, then we will also benefit from that change, and that we'll be able to take care of ourselves without the guilt. Because you can call out, but it doesn't mean that you're sitting at home, feet up, you know, eating some macaroni and cheese and chilling. Like, it is such a terrible feeling to be at home knowing that the show is happening without you.
No, yeah. I think that too, you know, that's something that is definitely in my head when I would call out of the show, of any show, not just Lion King, any Broadway show. It's like people are judging me, or, you know, there are crazy things on Twitter and Instagram and blogs, fans talking, and what are people saying about me? Are they thinking that I don't care, or that I don't take it seriously, or that I'm just faking it? It's like, no, actually the reality is that I'm at home sick, and probably stressed out, thinking about my voice, thinking about my body if it's injured, whatever's going on. It's so much to process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking when you were talking about, you know, being a younger person and deciding, you know, like deciding to make this choice to move to New York, and you're gonna pursue this career of acting. I realized that I do not know your Broadway debut story. I don't know much about it at all, and I'm really curious what that experience was like.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I graduated from college in 2013 from the Boston Conservatory, and I, for the most part in college, I never was one of those students that was always coming to New York to audition, because I knew that, number one, I didn't really love school, like, ever, not just college, elementary school. Was never a school person. So I knew I got to stay in this school, or if I leave, I don't know if I'm going to come back. So I never really auditioned. But when it came to graduation, we had showcase, and if, you know, I met some agents through that, my agents that I still have, I love them. My papas, I call them. And I started coming to New York for different meetings, for auditions here and there, for callbacks if I got one, but also for interviews, for day jobs and side hustles, and looking for sublet apartments, kind of really trying to set up my life. So in May, right after I graduated, I came to New York for a day trip. I was constantly doing day trips on the Greyhound bus, or if I was really fancy and needed a quick trip, you take the Amtrak. But this day I definitely took a Greyhound bus. a Bolt bus. And I had a callback for After Midnight.
Mm.
Remember
Mm-hmm.
that? Remember
Yeah, I
that show?
do. I do.
I had a callback for After Midnight. Funny, I got a callback because I can't tap. Tap, and they
They
were
liked
calling
your
back.
look. They liked your
Yeah.
voice. They were like,
I had to come back for like this big like tap callback work session, which I was terrified to do because I
Oh my
didn't
God.
tap. But I came into the city early so that I could go to a job interview at a restaurant. And I saw this ECC for Rocky the Musical,
Mm-hmm.
which I was like, at that point, I was like, any show that was auditioning, I was going because moving to New York, I don't have a job, I have no money. If I don't get something soon or if it doesn't work out, I got to go home to North Carolina, and that's not an option.
Yeah.
Went to the ECC, and I was typed in because I was in equity at the time. It was like 300 guys there. All these guys were like, they range from, your stereotypical Broadway dancer guy up to like huge, like bodybuilding, muscly guys who'd never done a Broadway show ever before. So they type people in and out, and I was typed in. I was the very last person to go in and sing my little 16 bars. And that was it, right? It was top of the day, early in the morning, and the rest of the day happened. The job interview happened, the callback happened. I didn't book After Midnight, obviously. And I didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and then I started getting callbacks. I moved to New York on June 1st with my best friend. We like rented a U-Haul and packed it up and drove all day and did the whole thing from Boston. And I got the restaurant job. I started June 2nd. And that Monday, after that weekend, I was just hitting the pavement every day, waking up and packing my book bag up with like all my rep book, my headshots, but also my clothes for my restaurant job at night, like hustling, grinding hard all summer. And by the end of that summer, I had not only booked Rocky, my first Broadway show, but I had done Love's Labor's Lost, Shakespeare in the Park. I did that. And I was leaving to go to the Old Globe Theater in San Diego for that fall before Rocky started to do an out-of-town tryout of a new show called The Last Goodbye, which was a new musical that never ended up coming to Broadway. But that summer of hustling and grinding and turned out to work in my favor. And it ended up with me making my Broadway debut in 2014 in Rocky.
That's amazing, Bradley. I think it's interesting because, did you ever watch Smash when it was out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I had never seen the second season until the pandemic hit. One of the first things Adam and I started watching when Broadway shut down was the second season of Smash, because why not?
Yeah.
It was something.
You know what? I need to go back and watch it because now that I've worked with Will Chase, I feel like I'm going to watch it in a different way. Like now that I'm actually in like on a Broadway scene, I feel like I'm going to take it in completely differently because when I was watching it, was it like 2009 or no, it was later than that, like 2012, 2011.
Yeah, something like that.
I was having an off period in my career, and I did have to go back home for 9 months. So I was like in Georgia. I was in Jonesboro, Georgia. I was like, it's over. I don't have a car. I can't even go to auditions in Atlanta. Like, what am I doing? And my highlight of every week was watching Smash. Let me be a star.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking about that, how they did a pretty good job of showing kind of what it's like. I think they did. Now I need to watch it again before I misspeak. It's interesting that you talk about the grind because I think it's very important for folks listening and watching to know that it's not just handed to you, that you are working a survival job. You are going to audition after audition after audition, and you don't get a rejection letter in the mail that says, hey, thank you so much for coming in. We've gone a different way. You get radio silence, okay?
Nothing.
Nothing. And you have to keep pushing yourself and believing in yourself in spite of that, because it's your dream, or that you've got something to offer. You're just waiting for it to align with whatever role you go in for. And it's just a lot of factors. It could be that you vibe with whoever's behind the table and they're like, you know what? come on into this show with me. Let's see
Yeah.
let's see more of what you got.
Yeah. That grind is such a it's also like an emotional grind too. Like you're learning, especially in those early days, those early years, you're learning how to like navigate your emotions around it because you care so much. And I think for me anyway, to like successfully make this character mine or learn this material in the way that I need to learn it to get the job, I have to really care about it. And caring about it means you see the end of the road of it, which is having the job, which is opening night, which is all the things that come along with that. And every time it doesn't go your way, it hurts a little bit, but you learn how to let go of that and like surrender to that and let it go and move on and know that, you know, if you didn't get this, it's because it's not yours, because this next thing down the road will be yours. And you know, it's navigating and
It
learning.
is navigating. I feel like I'm still learning that skill. And it's interesting because I feel like when it comes to auditioning for theater, I feel like I have an understanding. I go in, I am prepared, and I leave, and I think, you know, if I get a call back, great. If I don't, that means they have someone else in mind, and I can have peace with that. But as I've started to get more and more TV and film auditions, it is harder for me to put it aside because I feel like those auditions are there's so much more prep for me. There's so much that you have to bring of yourself into the space because it's just this camera lens focused on you. And, you know, maybe you are auditioning for a woman that's lost her child or, you know, something extremely emotional like that. And you have to dive deep and then send it off to your agents and let it go. And I think that has been that's been a challenge for me, and I'm still figuring out how to apply that skill that I've learned for theater auditions to my TV and film auditions.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And, you know, at least in a theater audition, you have the energy of the people in the room with you. You know, even if the energy is nasty, sometimes the energy is shady. Sometimes you leave that audition and you're like, you know, that man in the middle behind the table was so rude and was on his phone and eating a sandwich while I was auditioning. But at least I can like, you know, I have that connection. I know what happened. I know why I didn't get it. I know why they weren't interested in me. Whereas a television film audition, a tape, you send that off and you don't know if they watched it and loved it and just didn't go your way because of 1,000 reasons, or if it was left and no one cared. You just don't know. You have you have nothing to hold on to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I thought that I had gotten adjusted to that feeling until I most recently, and this is a breakthrough for me because I haven't made a TV debut, and so that's on my bucket list. But what has happened since I took a few more film classes and everything is that I've been pinned or I've gotten a Zoom call back, which is huge for me, right? But it makes it even harder to let it go.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes it so much harder. You're like, oh, they're considering me. I did something right. And it doesn't always mean you did something right. I had a Zoom callback and they were like, yeah, don't do anything you did in the first audition. Do it this way. And I'm like, y'all didn't want to call me up and tell me this before I had this call back.
No, the Zooms are really, they stress me out.
Yeah.
The Zoom callbacks or the Zoom meetings stress me out because you want to like listen because they might have some notes for you if you have to retape, right? Like what to do differently or what you did right. And then I'm always thinking like, wait, what did I even do? Like, wait, what did I do the first time? Like, so you liked what I did, but you didn't like what I did? Like, I might not get the job, and then they're asking you if you would want to do the job. Like the last Zoom meeting I had, they said to me, they're like, would you be willing to do this and that? And I'm like, wait, willing? Like, did I book it?
Right. Oh,
what does this mean? Turns out it meant nothing because I didn't get it. So, right?
It's like they're just checking off whatever list they have to ask every actor just in case to cover their bases. But it is a skill. It is a skill to do it and let it go. Do it and let it go. And for women, I mean, I'm sure you have this too, just like getting into costume and getting into character. But for me, it's like, okay, what hair am I wearing? How am I doing my hair? Or am I putting on a wig? And then I've got makeup, and it's just for this like 5-minute Zoom call back. And you're like, all right, wash it off. Or what about, it's a waste of a face. Maybe I'll
Right.
film an episode of 32 Part Cut. I don't know what to
You're
do.
like, well, that 5 minutes is gone, and what am I gonna do now, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
There's an adrenaline rush with it too. Okay, so we talked about your Broadway debut with Rocky, but I think, well, at least I've heard you talk about it many times about like your real family and most, I don't know, the experience that stayed with you and kind of was life-changing, it sounds like for you, was your time with A Bronx Tale. And you made lifelong friends there. And I think it's interesting when you get to start a show, because you got to start with Rocky, but it sounds like A Bronx Tale, it was just different. And what made it different?
I think a lot of things made it different. I think Rocky, I was so young and so green. I had just moved to New York. It was my first Broadway show. I barely knew my neighborhood that I lived in, much less like how to navigate being a professional working on Broadway. And I was a swing in the show. So there's that whole aspect of, learning. I kind of felt like I was back in school. Like my first year in New York was like grad school, because I swung the show at the Old Globe, and I also was a swing in Rocky. So I really got to learn how the job of a swing works, which is the hardest job in the theater. I think anyone who does it is a master, and they should be treated so well and given so much respect. And if they do it really well and if they love to do it, I'm like, you're gonna always have a job, because we need you. We need you so much. I was not the best swing. I think I told you, I'm like, you want to really mess your show up? Hire me as a swing, because I don't know how it comes off on stage, but I know that I was filled with so much anxiety and stress during Rocky, because you get that call that you're going on that night, and I'm going through my book and my notes, and I'm trying to memorize the lines, and it was a new show, so things were changing a lot, and it was a really technically like advanced show on Broadway, so things were happening and moving, and it was very stressful. But I did meet a couple of people in that show that I still hold so close to my heart. But Bronx Tale was a different story, because that group of people was just pure magic. I think the show itself also kind of bled in the building, right? The show's all about community, and it's about your neighborhood. It's about your family, your chosen family. And I think that really bled in the building. The theater was small, but the Longacre is a tiny little theater built for plays, but yet there were like 50 some people in those dressing rooms, right? like stuff like sardines, and it could have either gone really bad, or what happened to us, it went really beautifully. And we just had this great dynamic. I met such great people. It's been on my heart a lot lately, because Nick Cordero, we lost him. And that was and still is hard, I think, for everyone in the community, because, Bronx Tale would not have been what it was without him making that energy happen, right? The show definitely had this family community sort of feeling that made the cast be what it was, but also Nick was one of those individuals that really took that to the next level and showed us from the first week of rehearsal, like, on Saturday at 6 when we got released, or Sunday, whatever the day off was, like, we're gonna go out for a drink. We're gonna all go to someone's apartment and hang out. Like, we're gonna stay after the theater on Thursdays, and like he's gonna like set up, his dressing room as like the place where you get your drinks, and who's gonna have like, there would be weeks we would do different food in each dressing. Like, so much fun would happen there. People would get, we would have vacation swings come in that would kind of come in and say, I'm only gonna be here for 2 weeks. And they would end up coming back every single week just to say hey, and just to bring by some food, or I'm going to come by and have a drink with you guys. So that experience was so beautiful for me. Also, because it was my first principal role, I got to create it. I got to, sit in those labs and sit at the piano with Alan Menken while they like figure out my parts and talk about keys of the song and who didn't grow up with Alan Menken music,
Right.
right?
Right.
90
Exactly.
kids, if you were born in that time period, grew up on Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. So it was just so many things came together that made it this beautiful experience. I also was a little older. I wasn't subletting apartments. I had my own apartment. I was in a good space in my life. Like everything kind of equaled this beautiful year and a half that I don't expect to happen again. I think that that's
Mhm.
something that I had to really learn after that, is
Mhm.
that every experience is going to be different and it doesn't make them any better or any worse. But that moment in time, we were just all in such a beautiful place to connect. And it was just a great experience. And funny because the show also was not like a big hit, right? Like we weren't the big hit of the season. In fact, wasn't nobody talking about us.
But
But I
y'all were
think,
having a good time
yeah, and I
and
think that's
loving
what made
each
the
other
show
and yeah.
last so long, was because I think you could feel that energy on the
Mm.
stage. I think the fans that really hooked onto us felt that because they even became part of the crew. They would be at the stage door multiple times a week, back again and again and again, and they knew our names. It was just a beautiful experience.
It's interesting too when cuz I believe that too, that energy is so powerful that if it's right, even if it's negative energy, if your
Mhm,
villain is like really passionate and you're really giving it on stage, you can feel it in your seat. And that's
mhm.
what really makes for a good show. And when the energy isn't there, that's when you lose people. And, that's when you lose people's attention. I mean, and that's when you're not really grabbing your audience and it makes it you know less memorable. And so I think it's so great when a cast gets a chance to bond like you just described, because it just increases the vibe and the energy, and what you can leave someone can leave the audience feeling changed, or at
Mhm.
least feeling like they shared in an experience with the people on stage. And
Yeah,
it's not always the case.
yeah,
I
yeah,
am curious how you felt. And I didn't really mean to go from show to show to show when I was talking with you, but it just seems like we're naturally doing that. So
yeah.
I had a similar experience with having feeling like I had a family a lot in Chicago.
Hmm.
And I left Chicago to do my Broadway debut at The Lion King. And I kind of was so spoiled that I thought that I would have that same experience when I walked into The Lion King. And it's interesting to hear you talk about going from the Bronx Tale to The Lion King, because it is such a stark um contrast. And I know it was for me. I mean, and I would love to chat with you about that, because being a Black performer, and The Lion King does feel like one of the Black shows on Broadway. And so I had it in my head that I was about to be walking into such an amazing and family oriented experience. And
Yeah.
when you come into the show as a replacement, it doesn't feel like that at first. And it takes a
No.
while. And it's interesting because I just expected all these, Black folks on Broadway, it's just going to be great and welcoming. And it didn't feel like that. And, forgive me, anybody listening that's like, girl, I'm your friend. What are you talking about? It took a while, if we're being honest. It
Yeah.
took a while. And, um, when you and I started our rehearsal process together, I was only there for 6 months, and then left to
Yeah.
do Kiss Me Kate. So how did you begin to feel better about being at the Liking? I don't hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I just know how I felt when I started. So
Woo!
what was your journey? Because when I came back, after you've been there for a year, it seemed like you were more comfortable and you had made some connections there. So what was that like for you, and how did you get to feel, probably not how you felt at the Bronx Tale, but something?
Yeah. This is where we get real.
Yeah, I know, really, I
um,
want to though.
when I left A Bronx Tale, I was so excited to be joining The Lion King, to be playing Simba, because, like I said earlier, it was my first Broadway show. Who doesn't know The Lion King? I
Yeah.
never thought in a thousand years that I would even be considered to play Simba. I didn't know I could even sing it. 100 reasons why I didn't think I would be doing that show. And because I'd only really done original work, so I'd never really auditioned for a lot of replacement roles, which is a privilege and a luxury, I know. But I left the Bronx Tale crying to leave these people, but so excited to go on this next journey, taking steps forward in my career. The role is bigger, you know, all that. I quickly realized that my experience at Bronx Tale was a special one and would never be recreated again on Broadway, probably. And it certainly wasn't going to happen with The Lion King. One, because the show is built in a way that a lot of the principals have so much time to them to themselves,
Yeah.
right? To themselves. Playing Simba, you spend, unless I could have also, like many people in the show, been out of my dressing room, kikiing in the basement and the men's ensemble room and whatnot. But when I first got there, I definitely couldn't do that because it's hard.
Yeah.
The show is hard.
Mhm.
Even though I'm not in Act One, you know, when you hit the stage on The Lion King as one of those principal roles, you hit the ground running and you don't stop until your track is over. And for
Absolutely.
Simba, that is when the curtain comes down,
Mhm.
right? Act Two, curtain comes down, that's when you're free. So to prepare for that, it took me that first act to really like get myself together, to warm up, whether it be my voice, my body, getting the makeup. And so I spent a lot of time alone, and I needed that alone time. So really, end of the day, I couldn't have had the Bronx Tale experience because I couldn't have done my job. Now, as far as the building is concerned, I think that the difference that really kind of warmed my heart and made it difficult at times was navigating personalities.
Mhm.
That's what I'll say. I think that a show that is long running, it's long running because it's a well-oiled machine. And that machine requires a lot of individuals to make it work. It is their job to make it work. And they have figured out the equation to make the show work, to do their job, to clock in their hours, to do their thing. And they're not always necessarily thinking about how to deal with person to person in different ways, right? And I think that that was a big difference for me because when you're building a show, an original cast, you're all finding your way of doing that together.
Yeah.
But when you come in and you're dealing with someone who's been there for a decade, for 15 years, for 20 years, whatever that might be, they're not thinking about you in that same way. That goes for the people that run the show, that goes for the people that are in the show. And I think that it took me a while to like make peace with all of that
Mhm.
and to also kind of like find my way of like living my life doing the show too. Like
Mhm.
Broadway is a huge sacrifice no matter what the show is, right? You wake up every day and you're thinking about what you need to do for yourself to get to that place to be able to do your job at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And that Lion King was the first time that I had to like really face some challenges because of the intensity of the job, right?
Mhm.
Bronx Tale, I wasn't waking up and feeling pain all over my body or
Mhm.
or feeling vocally fatigued or sick enough to the point that I actually can't do the job. Like I never felt that before. I never had to navigate that. So that was also something I had to make peace with. But I think that when I did, when I finally did, it was year two. So you're so right about that. By the time you came back to Lion King, I definitely had figured out all the personalities. I figured out how to handle myself in the building, how to let people know when I'm down for the fun, when I'm down for the foolishness, and also when I'm not. When I'm not down for it. And when I gotta, how can I let you know? How can I let the powers that be know that today I don't feel like being here, but I'm here because it's my job and my responsibility. So what I need you to do is exit.
Yeah.
Like how do I let you know without being disrespectful to myself, to you? How do I not ruffle any feathers? How do I make this all happen? And I think that now that we're almost a year out from the pandemic, from the shutdown, it's like, oh, that was really the hardest thing about The Lion King for me. It was
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to like deal with everything happening behind the scenes
Yeah.
to keep myself going, to keep myself alive. Because there were definitely some moments in my journey with The Lion King that I would wake up and tell Adam, like, you know what? Is today the day I call my agents and say, get me out of this mess? Because if I don't get out of here, I'm gonna either I'm gonna hurt myself or I'm gonna cuss somebody out.
Yeah.
And like, which one is it gonna be? And I feel myself getting there, and that's not me. That's not me being my best self. That's not who I wanna be. That's not what I represent. But I'm feeling so pushed. I'm feeling so pushed. And that comes into another conversation of how we come back to Broadway, how we come back to our industry and be better. Because I think a lot of those things that I experienced and that happened where I felt silenced, where I felt like I couldn't speak up for my comfort, for my respect, all end up lining up with what's not okay in the workplace and what's not okay as far as how we relate and communicate to each other. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone. I don't think you're alone at all, Bradley, because it is such a long running show. And when I got there, I had a lot on my personal plate. Like I was planning my wedding, and I had just moved to New York and I wasn't settled. I was in a sublet, you know, and I did have these expectations, and it was not, I mean, I could not have imagined what my experience was. You just have to live through it. But I think just like you, it took me a while to get adjusted. It took me a while not to take things so personally. And I think something about this, having this year off, has actually taught me so much about myself that I didn't know I needed to learn. So much about how I handle conflict, how I handle newness and change, and how I have a history of handling people in a way that's probably not the best, that I thought it was the best and it's not. And I kind of had to reckon with myself in a way. And I've thought a lot about those early days in The Lion King. And I agree with you that it can feel like a toxic environment, but I understand better now why people say it's like a family, because families can be toxic too. And it doesn't mean that you don't love each other and you don't wish each other well. It just means that, you know, there's a lot of skeletons, there's a lot of baggage, there's a lot of feelings, a lot of stuff that you hold in that you don't say, and then all of a sudden it just bursts out. And it's The Lion King is such a beautiful show filled with so many beautiful human beings and artistry and bodies doing back-breaking work. But
the hardest things in the world.
Hardest things in the world.
Oh my gosh.
And then on top of that, to deal with, you know, being a family and whatever that means. Yeah.
And I think too, being a replacement, you forget that there's so much history in the building. People have their own individual lives, their own friendships and relationships that have formed in the building. And, you know, you coming into this building, if anything, you're just making annoying rehearsals for them happen.
It does feel like that. And I hate that. And I made a point. I hope I did a good job with this for you, but I never wanted to come off like I was irritated that we were in rehearsal, because I know how that feels, and it sucks because you're like, well, we have to be here because I don't know the show and I don't know your body and we've got to learn this. But yeah, people don't want to be in rehearsal because they've been in the show for forever and they're like, I know the show. I don't need to be here.
Yeah, so I definitely think there's that too. There's so many things with, oh, sorry, this construction outside of our building is sounding so loud. But yeah, there's definitely that aspect of like not wanting to, I hate that I'm wasting your time, or like you could be at home with your family or cleaning or doing whatever you want to do in your life because you spend so much time in this theater. I now am the reason you're in this theater even longer. And you never made me feel that way. And most people didn't, because I definitely I also understood the feeling, having been in other Broadway shows. Like I know what that feels like to do a put in or whatnot. But I definitely know that in the years afterwards, I'm sure I showed you that in rehearsals, and I was like, why are we sitting here saying these lines that we say every single day? And something new in them let's find something new on the stage.
Yes, let's find it on the stage.
Let's find it on the stage. Because right now, I know I'm not finding it. You told me I found it right now? You're lying. Because I'm pissed. And I'm telling you that I'm pissed.
Bradley, everyone knows when you're pissed. It is on your face.
Everyone knows. And when you don't know that I'm pissed, I'm like, are you not here? Because I'm showing you that I hate this.
Okay, so I'm going to pivot a bit. Speaking of things that are new and finding something new, I was so excited in September because you released a new single called Fool. And along with this beautiful music, you released this beautiful, beautiful music video. I'm curious about how you all filmed it, when you filmed it, what was your reasoning for it, just everything. Like, I love the video, love the song.
Oh, thank you. It was one of the highlights of my 2020 in such a dark year, right? Like, finding a way to create something and feel like an artist and it being my work, right? Like, what a different feeling it is to write and record and create my own visuals. It's like a high that I've never experienced before. But I started writing the music. I've been writing poetry and songs for a really long time before I even really knew that I wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. I wrote the song maybe a year after I moved to New York. Like, I have like I write so many songs, and it wasn't until I joined The Lion King that I actually started wanting to record music and really putting that forward, actually because of Nick Cordero. Mm. I'll always give him props for that because he wrote music and recorded music, and we would spend a lot of time hanging out, chilling, and singing our songs and talking about it. And I remember he told me one day, he was like, Bradley, he's like, if you really want to keep doing theater and doing Broadway shows, he was like, there's going to come a point where the feeling that you have today, that day I was really kind of over it, right? And felt kind of burnt out and didn't want to do it. He was like, you're going to have so many days where you feel like this. And there's so much bullshit that happens in these buildings and theaters, these people that run it, everything is not going to run perfectly. Mm-hmm. So how can you survive? Make your own art. Mm-hmm. If you feel that you can, if you have it, he was like, you literally have tons of songs, these great songs that I love, everyone loves them, like, record them, let's get to work. Yeah. And I started doing that, and Fool went through a lot of revisions, actually like 6 months before we released it, when Broadway was still up and running. It had run like so many different versions and tempos, and like I made some lyric changes, and I didn't really know how I wanted to release it. I didn't know if I wanted to release it when I did, if I wanted to put something else out. And when the fight for racial justice started over the summer, I was in a dark place, like most people, like most Black people, like most, hopefully like most people. We were really in a place of, what can I do? I'm feeling so much. Why is this still happening? Why are people surprised that it's happening now, or that it's happening at all? Because this has been my reality my entire life, right? Like, what can I do to like free myself? And director Austin, who I've been talking to for months prior to that, met through a friend. He had reached back around to me and he was like, when do you want to start making visuals for your music? Like, he was in LA for a while. He was like, I'm back in New York. I know that Broadway's not happening, so like our schedules might work out. Like, what do you want to do? Do you have any ideas? And I was like, I guess let me look at what I have. Let me see what I want to do. What am I feeling? And I was listening to Fool again because I was editing it with my producer. And I was like, oh, I think this could have a deeper meaning than just being a matter of the heart, right? Than just being a matter of the heart that deals with a relationship, a love relationship. Really saying that, talking about the heartbreak that comes with people's perception of your skin and of your history and of the chains that are put on you just the second you walk into a room. And how much that hurts, no matter if it leads to just judgment or if it leads to the worst case scenario, which is someone losing their life.
Yeah.
So Adam, my fiance, Adam and I kind of came on board with this creative vision of, I want to see Black men looking beautiful and ethereal, angelic, but also looking masculine. Also, like, really talking about masculinity and the fragility in that. Also talking about, like, what is masculinity? Can it be light? Can it be angelic and pink and queer? Yes, it can be. Can it also be muscles and sweat and sex? Yes, it can be that too. It can be all of that. We are all of that. I am all of that. And Austin, the director, was so down for that. I called on some beautiful friends to be in it, and I wanted to let it be an experience that was artistic for them too. I definitely didn't want it just to be a look at me kind of thing, because I'm like, you're hearing my voice, you're gonna see me in it, but also I want to highlight the beautiful people that I know. Like, I know the list of friends and coworkers that we have that are beautiful, talented Black people. We could be talking all day about that.
Absolutely.
So it all came together. It was hard to do in COVID times, testing and, the bubble and how we do it all. And we shot it in Connecticut and in New York City. So all the outside stuff was in Connecticut. So all the transportation of that, like, we had a set, right? Like, we were doing it.
Yeah.
And it really came together in such a beautiful way. And even though it's been quite a while since we released it, not a day has passed that I don't get a DM or an email or something on Twitter where people say how much they love the video and the song, or how much it, like, filled them up by seeing it, whether it be because they saw themselves in it or because they feel that they saw something they don't see often. And that really was my whole mission with it, because I think that if I'm going to create anything, I'm going to create what I wish I had seen as a child, what I wish I had seen as a young adult. And, it's all, art is service, right? Like, if we can all do our part, what can I do? I know that God put me here, and the reason for that is to create and to be either a vessel for someone's creation or to create my own. And I'm going to always make sure that when I create something, that it's for a greater good. And I feel that Fool did that, and it continues to do that. It's definitely not, I'm not saying that I'm, Beyonce out here changing America, but I hope that if it's just one little queer Black kid that can open my video on YouTube and feel like, wow, like, I see myself, then that's enough for me. And it also filled me up too. It made such a dark time so much brighter.
What you did, it was what you all did. It's just so important. And I felt like when I was watching it, I was seeing how it's making its mark. And, you know, even if you, like you said, I doubt that this is true. Even if you touch one person, I think you've touched more than one person. But I think that even that is enough to light a spark and to change the course of someone's life. And if they feel like in watching it, if that one queer Black kid is watching this art from your heart and from everyone that worked with you on it, if they're watching that and it changes their life, then you've done your job. You know, really, it's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I want to say the quote that you have at the end, because I think it's so powerful. And it's really why I wanted to chat even more about your concept for the film, because the film it's so beautiful and the song is so beautiful that the message that you're sending at the end is so, it aligns with the video, but it also has a stark contrast to everything else you've seen before. And so this, you all should go check out Fool. It's on Spotify, iTunes, and you can see the video on YouTube. But I'm going to leave this quote with you. To the little Black boys left in the margins, you are beautiful. You are powerful and fragile. You are complex and resilient. You are worthy. May you be seen and protected, not just by our ancestors, but by all of us. Black Lives Matter. I thought that really summed it up. And it had me thinking, because I'm a Black girl from the South, and I feel like I have a lot of privilege in that I'm here, I'm on Broadway, I'm around all different types of people. I feel like I have a big understanding of life. But when I go back home, there's a lot of closed-mindedness, especially in our Black communities. And I'm curious, what can we do to change that? How can we support little Black queer kids and make them feel like they're okay, that they're supported, because the world is already against us just by being Black. And so add anything else to that, it makes it more difficult.
Yeah, I think that allowing them to feel seen and heard, and allowing them to know that who they are authentically, it's beautiful. Like, you don't have to change anything. You don't have to be in your head thinking you have to dress a certain way or walk a certain way or talk a certain way. And these are all things that I experienced as a kid, right? And I'm not someone that has like a big epic bullying story, or like I don't have that. I'm privileged in that way, in that regard. But I always had that stuff running in my head as a kid, as an adult. And just letting kids know that who you are is fine, right? Who you are is fine. What toys you like to play with, what music you like how you like to dress, like all of it is beautiful. And I think that there is so much, there's so much that we have to work on in the Black community in regards to queerness. And I think that anything we can do to just validate people's existence, it's the good work. And I hope that, like I said, I hope that Fool did that. I see so many things popping up too, whether it be on Instagram, whether it be other friends' music, that it's all aiming at that same thing. And the fact that we're having the conversations about it and making the pieces of art about it, writing about it, it's all a step in the right direction. And yeah, that's all we can do.
That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And bit by bit, the tides will shift. And we'll see what that looks like. And then maybe 10 years from now, you and I will sit down and chat and, talk about how much has changed, and it'll be a good thing. Okay, so I want to get into our stage door round, where I'm just going to ask you a few questions and you give whatever comes to mind. In the past, I've asked people very frivolous, trivial questions, but I kind of felt like our conversation was digging a little deeper. So I've changed course a bit, and the questions I'm going to ask you aren't as light, but I hope that that's okay.
Yeah.
And then would you like to stick around for the curtain call?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Because I I have some other things I want to sit down and chat with you about. Okay, so let's get into the stage door questions. This
Okay.
one actually is frivolous, this first one. So, what is your favorite post-show treat?
Like if I'm being bad, some pizza. If I'm being
Yes.
good, maybe like some cereal, like something healthy, like
Okay.
healthy cereal. Mm.
Yeah, okay, okay. Healthy cereal. Nice. Like some Kashi Go Lean.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. All right. So, who inspired you as a young, let's say teenage age performer, and who inspires you now?
Oh wow. As a young teenage performer, it was definitely the older people at my dance studio.
Hmm.
They were in, late high school or they were in college still pursuing dance and performance. And we would do these big recitals that were, they would be dance numbers, but also they would have singers and they would do scenes, or like the shows would always be like themed in like a certain, Broadway or like ballroom dance or something. And they would be just pros. They would show up as pros. And I always like wanted to be excellent like they were, not only in the performance, but also in the process of getting there. I'm
Hmm.
such a process nerd. I love process. So seeing how they would get to the final stages of preparation, like first day of rehearsal, how they would learn the material. Like I love all of that. So definitely them. And right now, who inspires me is I'm inspired by so many people. Right now, I'm gonna say Issa Rae.
Yes.
I'm so
Yes.
inspired by her because, she's out here being a huge star, just Issa Rae, the movie star, but also she's Issa Rae, the creator. She
Yeah.
is creating just as much content as she is performing. And I have mad respect for that.
Yeah. And she really paved her own way. She
Hmm.
was like, she was putting out her art and just putting it out there and putting it out there. And now she's seeing the fruits of it. And I love to see it,
Yeah,
It's
right?
great.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Okay. What advice would you give your younger self? If you could sit down and chat with younger Bradley, what would you say to him?
I would tell little Bradley, ooh, he was something else. um, I would tell myself to not sacrifice my life for what I loved.
Mm,
I think growing up, I was so drawn to performance because it saved me in many ways. It was safety, right? Getting to play a role and be someone else, getting to sing something and hide behind the character or dance the material. It was a character, right? It hid me. That
mm,
was safety. Also, the affirmation of the performance, right? The
mhm.
applause, like people love me. Like that was so fulfilling for me. But I think along the way, I loved it so much that I let it take over my life.
Mm.
And I would tell younger Bradley to like enjoy life and know that this hobby that you love one day is going to one day become your job. And when it's your job, there's still so much life around it. How do you enjoy it? What are your
Mm.
hobbies? Where do you really find joy outside of being a performer? That's what I would tell younger Bradley. And to stop
Yeah.
being so hard on yourself. I'm working through it every day. Every day I'm always trying to like not be so hard on myself. I think a product of being a black person in this country is that, you know, we have to do twice as good
Hmm.
to get half as much. And I think
Yeah.
that's really instilled in my mind from my family and from our history. And it's really unlearning that like you don't have to be so hard on yourself. You don't have to work to the point that you're broken, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big lesson that we can all learn, that I've definitely learned, that like you can still be excellent without being broken.
Yeah. That's good. You're speaking to me right there. I still struggle with that. I can't tell you how many times a week Austin is telling me that I'm being too hard on myself, or my therapist is saying, "Adrienne, it's okay. You're being too
Yeah,
hard on yourself." Um and it will probably be a life lesson. It's something that
yeah,
I'll keep navigating through, but I feel you on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna close with a silly question that I like to ask everyone. So I've chosen the cast for you, and maybe we'll do a different cast for the curtain call. But at the Lion King, who would you slap? Who would you hug? And who would you take to lunch?
Ah, who would I slap? There's some names there's some faces that pop in my head that I would definitely love to slap. I would love to pimp slap some people, which is different slap. But just a good old fun slap, Bonita, because the recklessness and the humor, the comedy, and there are moments in that building that I laughed so hard. She would provide me with a laugh that I needed so much. And it would just almost hurt my stomach how much I laughed. So I would want to slap her because one, thank you, and two, she's just wild. Take to lunch, Brenda.
Yeah.
The great, great Brenda. That's my friend, forever friend, mentor. Love her. I think, yeah, I wouldn't have made it in The Lion King without her. She's soul sister, you know?
Yeah.
What was the last one?
Who would you hug?
Who would I hug? Who would I hug? You know, so many. I'm gonna say CD.
Oh yeah, CD would give you a good hug.
Today it's CD because she always just sees you. She always sees you, and there are moments in that show I'll never forget on stage with her because she would always like meet me right where I was in the He Lives in You area of the show. If it was a day where like something would happen on stage and we would both be like fighting laughter, or it was a day where she was speaking to my soul. I was like, sweetie, you ain't talking to Simba and you're not Rafiki right now. This is just us. Like, she's a beautiful soul and I would love to hug her and get that energy from her.
Oh yeah, she gives good hugs too.
Good vibes.
Good vibes. Good vibes. So before we let you go, before you and I head over to the curtain call, where can we find you and where can we find Fool?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Brad Gibson13. You can find me on Twitter at Brad Gibson 19. I'm never on Twitter, y'all. So follow me. Maybe I'll start talking to you. And you can find Fool on any streaming platform. You can find it on Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, anywhere you stream music. And you can find the video on YouTube.
Well, thank you very much, Bradley. I will see you at the curtain call.